morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acomb, and it is Phil Friday. We're going to be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano here in just a little bit. A viewer gave it that title, and I like it. We've got a lot of questions to get to, and we've got a couple quick things to update you on. First, as you know, Trump Properties has been quite a saga. The former president asking for donations so that he could save Trump Tower. That was coming out yesterday. Well, the New York Attorney General takes initial steps to prepare to seize the assets. Of course, this is what she ran on. This is how she won, many believe, her race. So now she is starting that process. And I mentioned that to kick off the program because we received this comment from a viewer. And great minds think alike, as the old saying goes. Because as I was watching some news coverage, the last couple days, but specifically this morning, I thought about the whole squatter issue. Here's the comment. Hey, Frank, I think I have a solution for Trump's bond situation. If things go badly, all Trump has to do is squat in Trump Tower. And under New York State eviction laws, when James comes to take possession, the police will arrest her, right? That seems to be the case. What a mess. And that's what I was thinking this morning as I watched it, how that can be easily manipulated. As a matter of fact, did you see that? I don't know if you'd call him a star or what you call it when it comes to TikTok, but there's a person using TikTok to, they call him an influencer, to tell recent migrants who have crossed the border illegally how they can kind of game the system. Have you heard about this? His name's Lionel Marino. He's a self-proclaimed Venezuelan migrant, and he's espousing, as the New York Post put it, and Kristen Fleming, the good old-fashioned virtues of leeching off government resources, not to mention panhandling, scamming businesses, and most recently, seizing homes using squatters' rights. Yes, he's teaching people on TikTok how to use, quote-unquote, squatters' rights. He has 502,000 followers, and it's almost, again, you would almost think it was a parody. He praises Biden for some of the handouts. In one video aimed at aspiring beggars, he recounts panhandling for money on the highway. In another, he uses his baby, an essential influencer prop, adorning her with a sign to ask for cash. Also, in his repertoire, good start with that, Frank, WIC scams and how to get a free phone from the government. This is what he said in the video. Quote, I don't like to work. Work is for slaves, kids. Don't humiliate yourself. He has railed against the possibility of TikTok shuttering, and despite many love letters to Joe Biden, who he calls me Papa, Marino warns that he will mobilize Latino voters away from the candidate if his precious platform is restricted. Repertoire. There, it was better. Sorry. In his now viral video, Marino informs fellow migrants that they can take advantage of squatters' rights laws, telling them to, quote, invade American homes so they cannot be removed. I found out there was a law, he says in one video, that says if a house is not inhabited, we can seize it. Wow. Anyway, tying those together, not exactly sure why I'm moving around so much like that. Another comment from yesterday's program, a little lengthy before we go to break, but I think definitely worth mentioning because it's new to me. From a viewer, we hear Biden touting the historically low unemployment rate, which I always thought was derived by data taken from actual unemployment records, corrected somehow for people that aren't currently receiving unemployment insurance. After some research on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, I discovered disturbing information. The unemployment rate is determined by Labor Bureau employees who determine what geographic area and what households in that area are surveyed. So very much, if you're familiar with it, which I don't know why you would be, very much like the rating system for television or radio. The sampling is about 110,000 individuals from interviewing about 60,000 households, which with a U.S. workforce of about 167.43 million people equates to 0.00066% of the workforce. Incredibly small. My point is, without actual statistics to pull up, the Labor Bureau can manipulate the data to provide any result they want to show. which in this political environment makes me think that the percentage of unemployed reported can't be trusted. Curious on your thoughts. I don't have initial thoughts. My blush reaction is I'm not surprised. At first blush, I should say, reaction is not really a surprise. But that is fascinating. I appreciate you doing the research. I will try to look into it a little bit further. But, we've talked about it so often on this program, just like with polls, how things can be manipulated. So it is not a surprise necessarily, but also disturbing, as you said. So keep those comments coming in. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. We have one virtual wave, and it looks like the Assemblyman just pulled in. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We have Phil in the studio. We're going to get to him in just a moment because it is Phil Friday, as the viewer calls it. A couple quick announcements, though. Early voting for the presidential primary has begun in Steuben County, or will, tomorrow in advance of the April 2nd election day. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can go to the Steuben County Board of Elections. Also, a big announcement coming out of Chemung County yesterday. The Oak Ridge Boys are coming to the Chemung County Fair. You recall a few months ago, we interviewed Richard Sturban from the Oak Ridge Boys, so we look forward to that concert coming up. I'll get more information as we near, maybe get another interview. And finally, this is a big one, and I've heard from some people already who said that they loved it, and there was no doubt. We all saw the commercial. The Sound of Music, Corning Painted Post, Drama Club, putting that on. We had our guests in earlier this week. It already started yesterday. Not too late to get tickets. So 22nd, 23rd at 7 p.m. and March 24th at 2 p.m. So when you go and see the show, please let me know what you think. I know the kids are very talented. They did a great job in the interview. We got a lot of great responses over that as well. So let's take another break. And Assemblyman Phil Palmesano will be in the studio, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. And we are back, Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And joining us in that studio this morning, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, Frank. Good to be with you again.
I don't even know where to start. I have about 14 pages of notes, so sit back and relax. But first, earlier this week, I should say, I brought up the New York State Energy Research and Development Agency, and I actually put it out to viewers because this is a pretty good gig. $500,000 to, what would you say, spin?
That's a good word.
Spin from switching over to solar, wind, and all the cost worries. Make sure that just goes away. First of all, I think that's a Herculean task. So you earn that $500,000. But isn't that amazing that they have to spend that kind of money, our money, to make this sound okay?
Well, you think Doreen Harris, the president of NYSERDA, co-chair of the Climate Action Council plan, the major defender of the CLCPA and all the rules and regulations they're getting and mandates are being put in place, she should be able to do it. But apparently, I think the more they talk about it, the more they realize that the public isn't buying it. No. You can go from, the mandate. It's basically all part of a plan to dismantle the natural gas infrastructure supply and delivery system.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you want to take away consumer choice on how you heat your home, cook your food, power your buildings and the vehicles you drive. It goes down to this mother of all unfunded mandates that we've talked about before. The electric school bus mandate is coming into place really soon, starting in 2027. So to spend money to have to spin it to the public. I mean, people, they want to address the criticisms about cost, affordability, reliability, and I don't know if that's enough money, quite frankly.
No,
it's not enough, but they don't care about spending the money because ultimately this money comes from the ratepayers, and the taxpayers, because they have to subsidize that. It's through the NYSERDA's budget is basically all off the books, and it's funded through the rates that people pay in their utility bills, and the rates that are going to continue to climb. So
$500,000, and we learned yesterday too, on a side note, that taxpayers have paid around $500,000 for Cuomo's legal fees. So we're really getting on the hook for a lot of things that I don't think we want our money going to.
Well, I think the other thing, you're exactly right. And when we talk about the budget, I've said time and time again, I think my colleagues and all of you sometimes forget that it's not their money.
Yeah.
It's the public's money. But they just want to spend willy-nilly like there's no tomorrow. And while families, farmers, small businesses are all tightening their belts, making tough decisions, making tough choices, but the government's not doing the same thing.
And that's what's so frustrating, and we appreciate you sending out the release to talk about the budget process, because frustrating to us is that Governor Hochul's was bad enough. And then we start to see the other numbers being thrown around.
All right, yes. Because
It's insanity because, as you mentioned, everybody that I think watching, they get that pit in their stomach when they have to go to the grocery store, they have to fill up their tank or their bills come in, and here we see this budget, and it's hey, let's keep just spending like
well,
it's.
Yeah, I mean, we went through. The governor put her budget out in January.
Yeah.
$233 billion. That was several billion, $4 billion more than last year.
Yeah.
Already, spends more in Florida and Texas combined. Then we go through the budget hearings, and the Senate and Assembly. Part of the process is they pass their one house budget resolutions. They're to outline their priorities. Their priorities were, let's spend nearly $246 billion, $13 billion more than the governor presented, $3.5 billion in new taxes over the next 2 years. And we already have high inflation rates. We already have high taxes. We already have a terrible business climate. We already continue to see the out-migration of more and more New Yorkers, families, and businesses leaving the state, and this would just exacerbate it. Their budget, quite frankly, is unsustainable and irresponsible. Budget is about priorities, and where are their priorities? And you don't have to raise taxes and spend that much money to address the things we really need to address in this budget. Their priorities are similar to the governor: $2.4 billion for the migrant crisis, for illegal migrants that are coming into our state. $700 million for the Hollywood film tax credit. We continue to see that. That continues to be a concern. I don't think people want to see their money spent to subsidize Saturday Night Live.
I know we talked about it before, but Saturday Night Live's not leaving New York City.
It's not leaving New York because they start the show every week, live from New York,
Exactly.
not live from Saskatchewan. They're not going anywhere.
No.
But we do have some serious issues that need to be addressed as part of this budget process we've talked about before. The governor proposed devastating cuts to our schools, which would have the ramifications of which would have significant impacts on our students, on our programs, on sports, all the like, because the amount of money, more than half of my school districts were facing significant cuts. Some as high as 30% in Hammond Sport, 18%, 16%, 12%, all over, many over $1 million. One school district, Penn Yan, was looking at nearly $2.5 million cut. This would be devastating. And so the good news is that the legislature, and I would say both sides of the House, both chambers, unanimously opposed the governor's cuts, said it's not acceptable. And we had $1.3 billion in additional revenue that is available based on the projections so we don't need to spend that much more money. We can deal within the context of the funding that we have, but it's about where are your priorities. So you have the school aid cuts. We've talked about the CHIPS program, where the governor wanted to cut $60 million, or 10% from the really impactful CHIPS program that provides money right directly to our local communities, municipalities, so they can fix their local roads, bridges, and culverts. Those types of things. Then also you have the one issue that I talk about a lot is our most vulnerable citizens, those individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. They should be a priority in our funding. Their quality of life and quality of care. They were dealt with very bad hand in life, and no fault of their own. But we should be taking care of them, making sure they're a priority, making sure they're getting the services they need, and also the direct support professionals who are tasked with their quality of life and quality of care services. And those individuals who work in our not-for-profit homes are not making a good wage. And there's things we could do to help that. Because they're already at a competitive disadvantage to those direct support professionals who work for the state. A state employee working with our developmental disabled making, upwards almost $25 an hour. But those individuals who are working in our homes are probably just over minimum wage. But they're also at a competitive disadvantage to McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell. People can go there and make a couple more bucks an hour. And these individuals who work in these fields, they're really dedicated. They do it because they care. Sometimes these direct support professionals are the only family these individuals get to see on a regular basis, and if they're not there to provide that care, then what are we going to do for them? Things we take for granted, going to the movies, going to the store, going out shopping, things of that nature, is it really a bonus and a treat for the individuals with developmental disabilities. And if those direct support professionals aren't there to help them, then it's going to make it very difficult for them to do those things and enjoy those quality of life and quality of care things that they need. So that needs to be a part of the equation too. We can do that. And the governor didn't put, she put 1.5% COLA in the budget. The legislature, fortunately, added more money to that. And when you're spending $246 billion, there's something in there for everyone, which is what I said in my statement.
Right.
But we can pare this down to really focus on what our priorities are and what they should be, and that's what we need to be doing and continue to advocate for as we move forward in this budget process.
Now, Phil, in the governor's defense, if she makes school cuts, why does it matter if they can't get to school with the EV buses anyway?
Oh, God. That's a whole
No,
other show,
okay,
Frank.
yeah, I know.
Well, I mean,
All right,
but,
no, I was just kidding.
no, I understand what you're saying,
It just seems like it's an attack on taxpayers, first and foremost, but also the students themselves. I mean, you and I talked about it, I think, last time, and I've talked about it with many people. We know that COVID had a detrimental effect on young people. And so now the governor, just to kind of show you insight about, like you said, the wasteful spending, where priorities are, now is the time to cut.
Right. I mean, we had what it is they call the hold harmless provision.
Yeah.
We keep schools at the baseline they were the previous year. We don't cut them any further. But she went in because of enrollment, and there's been a decline in enrollment. But
Sure.
the fact of the matter is, our school districts still have to pay for that teacher to be in a classroom, no matter whether there's 30 kids or 25 kids or 10
Right.
kids. They have to pay for the classroom. They have to pay for the teacher. They have to pay to heat the building. They still have to pay for the infrastructure that needs to be in place. The salaries are going up. The pension benefits are going up. The health insurance costs are going up. So to come in and undercut them with the cuts of this significant level that the governor proposed, the ramifications would be devastating to the programs, to the students, and to the property taxpayers who would be on the hook to try to make up any difference.
And we're going to get to some questions from viewers, but don't you think she's, from the political side of things, she's kind of playing with fire when it comes to support from the teachers union?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this proposal of universal opposition.
Yeah.
They kind of walked it back a little bit when their budget director came out, and when we knew there was 1.3 billion more. She goes, "We're going to work to try to address this issue," but she's still trying to make comments on double down. And I think this. I don't know who was giving her the political advice on this equation, but I think really part of it's probably a budgeting negotiation tactic. So she knows that the legislature is going to be a priority. So if you're going to put more money in here, you're not. I'm going to put more money here, and you can't have this and that. So I don't understand it though. This is not something she should have went down this road, because and she ran into a brick wall of opposition on both sides of the aisle, both chambers, and deservedly so.
Yeah, well, we got to take our first break. When we come back, we've got a lot of questions from viewers, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. There's our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Assemblyman Phil Palmesano joining us. We've got a lot of questions from viewers. Phil, first of all, I'm sure you've seen in the news, I think everybody's kind of talking about it, which is these quote-unquote squatters' rights. And the viewer asked, is there anything about property rights going on in Albany in the talks of this?
It seems like whenever there's talks about rights with property rights, everything really seems to have tried to shift inside of the tenant. They want more tenant protections, issues that would really put our landlords and property owners at more at a disadvantage. And I've talked to real estate agents around here where they've had problems with getting people out of properties that they're trying to show the property, but they can't get them out of the property. So, and I saw the story I think this week that was down in New York area.
That's what this viewer mentioned.
Where she went in there and tried to change the locks and got arrested because they said she had to go through the housing courts, which could take over a year or 2 years. I mean, and
the damage that can be done as the squatters. You've seen the pictures, and the one mansion, I can't remember where it was, people took it over and just had parties all the time.
It makes no sense. It's really disturbing to think that this could happen in a civilized society, and where are the rights or property rights and owners. It's wrong, but it needs to be addressed. But unfortunately, the majorities in Albany and the governor want to focus more on the tenants, never about the rights of property owners and their rights to the property they own and how they want to do this. But they want to make it more difficult to evict people on things, but you can't evict them on other things. So it's just really concerning where they're heading, and that's going to be part of the discussions with the budget negotiations, which they're going to try to extend more rights to tenants. And I mean, that's supposedly legitimate tenants, but these people aren't tenants. They're just commandeering these apartments.
It's literally called squatters.
So it's really concerning. It needs to be addressed.
Well, and you're right about the property owners. Remember, it must have been right during COVID, right towards the end of it, where they became such the bad guys. Remember that they were almost vilified from these people that had lived rent-free during COVID for so long that once that came due, they became the evil villain in a Disney movie.
Right, and they weren't getting reimbursed.
Right.
People couldn't get it.
But they still had to pay their taxes.
They still had to pay their taxes. They still had to pay their mortgage. But yet, people living there, they didn't have to pay because we were experiencing COVID. So it was never a fair play. But that was just the policies that were driven by this progressive legislature and the governor. And it's unfortunate, and that's the state we live in, and we got to change it. We got to continue to speak up and advocate on all these policies. We talked about the energy policy. We could talk about that time and time again. That's what's it's like a runaway freight train. It's heading down the tracks. Affordability is not a part of the discussion anymore. It's really about other people's rights and not the rights of law-abiding citizens and the public.
And we're going to talk about that when it comes to public safety as well, but a couple more questions. So with regard to switching over to all electric homes, can I install a solar field and a wind turbine in the lot next to our home within the city of Corning? We do own the lot, so we're not infringing on any property in our neighborhood.
That might be difficult. But
Good luck, right?
The interesting thing about it is with the siting of the solar and wind that we keep hearing about, as far as ordinances, there's no local control. The state of New York has taken away any local input, any local control of the siting of these projects, and there's no home rule anymore from that perspective. So the state of New York is going to get to decide where these solar and wind farms are going to go, regardless of what the local community wants to have happen, and that's not really the right approach. And all this is going to happen all over upstate New York. But the electrification process, I mean, the estimates are, the go to all electric heating, to say you're using natural gas, because 60% of the people in New York State right now heat their homes with natural gas. 40% of our generation is from natural gas. And they want to go to all electric. 3 different studies out there have said if you convert your home over to electric, you're looking at a cost of about $35,000. That's for a homeowner. Now, I'm talking about a business or a manufacturer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, very expensive. It's not a reliable source of heat either.
No, that in this area, when you figure the winters, also, I mean, I know it goes without saying, we say it all the time, but the grid is just not there.
No, it requires a massive build out to the grid. I mean, our total generating capacity in New York State right now is 41 gigawatts. That's with wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, natural gas, and oil.
Yeah.
And we need to, expand our capacity according to NYSO, who is tasked with making sure the lights stay on, the power stays on, to like 124 gigawatts. And also, from a reliability perspective, there's a reliability gap concerns that are out there. We need 27 to 45 gigawatts of dispatchable emission-free resources. Now, dispatchable means 24/7. Wind and solar does not count because it's not dispatchable. Like nuclear would be dispatchable. So 24/7 natural gas would be dispatchable. It's almost like they don't want either of those things. And the technology is not in place yet. We don't know if it's going to be hydrogen, renewable natural gas, renewable propane, advanced nuclear. What this, carbon capture and sequestration, what the technologies are going to be. They don't exist yet. But it's almost like they're going full steam ahead with this plan to dismantle the natural gas industry and the use of fossil fuels in New York State, which is an affordable and reliable source of energy. And I say it over and over again, you don't tear down a bridge before you build a new one, but that's exactly what the progressive and environmental advocates and executive are trying to do with the policies they're implementing, both through policy-wide and also through regulatory process. We have a cap and invest program that's coming in place. They want to basically put in place by regulatory edict and not let the legislature vote on it. And I put a bill with Senator Marin and some of my friends that said any of these recommendations that come forward from this regarding cap and invest, which is going to basically increase prices for consumers, would have to be voted upon by the legislature to approve it. But the legislature doesn't want to do that. They don't want accountability. They want to pawn it off on someone else.
All right, one last question before we go to break. This is from a viewer. I actually sent it out yesterday. A New York State mandate that all school buses need to be electric by 2027. Does that include the private contractors, i.e. Bernie Bus and Lawrence Smith?
No, not that, but there are mandates beginning in 2045. All new heavy-duty and medium-duty vehicles would have to be purchased, would be new.
Okay.
The school districts are really being the guinea pigs. Beginning in 27, they have to start converting their buses, and they have to have their entire fleet converted by 2035. And this is how hypocritical the state of New York is, or how ridiculous they are. The state of New York's heavy-duty fleet doesn't have to be totally converted until 2040, a whole 5 years after our school districts. But then again, also the the state of New York has an out. If it's not feasible to do so, they don't have to move forward.
That must be nice.
So why are we asking our school districts to be the guinea pigs in this process?
And what happens if we turn it down? I mean, we have as a voter. I mean, I think that's because I can't imagine people seeing that bill for the cost of these buses and accepting it.
We vote on those school buses. I remember we voted on Corning's a couple last year, and it's like several $100,000 for several school bus purchases. They're talking about one or two.
Yeah.
I mean, and the money that they talk about that's out there, Frank, the government always brings up, well, there's $500 million in the bond act for it, and the president talks about the federal money. The amount of money that's in there between the federal and state, Dorian Harris, president of NYSERDA, who at the budget hearing said there's only enough money if we used all that money for school buses to purchase 3,000 school buses. We have a fleet of near 50,000 school buses in the state of New York. We're going to need an additional 10,000 buses because of the range issues and things surrounding that. We're going to need more bus drivers. So it's problematic. The costs don't afford it.
This is a good point from a viewer. Who's going to bear the cost of educating all the mechanics that need to work on these electric vehicles at the school level?
That's another problem because there's not the technology, the expertise in dealing with this. We don't know, and it's I always talk about tearing down a bridge before you build a new one. I almost refer to this as like flying the plane in the air and fixing it at the same time, and it doesn't make sense.
That's another thing in the news right now too.
That's the problem with these policies, Frank. And so,
well, here's another example, and then I do have to go to break. But there's a great article, if anybody has a chance to check it out, at the New York Post. Daniel Turner. Even the left now admits closing the Indian Point nuclear plant actually harmed the planet. Yeah, I mean, it's these knee-jerk reactions, just like with the electric, that, again, I know I said on the show a lot, but it's like virtue signaling without having anything really in place.
Indian Point was a reliable, clean source of power generation. 2,000 megawatt nuclear facility that provided 25% of the power to New York City. Why they closed it down was all political. And now what you're seeing is global emissions in the New York City area before Indian Point was shut down was like 70% from peaker plants and things of that nature. It's jumped to almost 90%. And again, our upstate generation in New York State, our areas, because we have the hydro, we have the nuclear, we have some wind and solar and others, is 90% emission-free generation. So how about the city of New York address their issues first before you put all these burdens and additional costs and unreliable energy mandates on our families, our farmers, our small businesses, and manufacturers here, because all this is going to do is continue to lead to our nation leading out-migration crisis of more people leaving the state.
We've got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio after this. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I got to say, Phil, having you in the studio, I'm glad we're going to go to 2 hours, because I think we could have filled 2 hours today. We've got a lot to cover. All right, next up. This is kind of deja vu here. You want to talk about fracking?
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, I've been talking to you about various fracking issues for almost 20 years.
Yeah, and of course the state of New York banned
You're fracking going how long?
Horizontal high volume fracking with water back, I think it was 2013, 2014 under Governor Cuomo. And of course then you had the assault on the pipelines and then even the use of natural gas. And there's another one.
Yeah.
Just came out.
I had no idea there was other ways to frack.
Yeah. And well, that's the thing. So the legislature over the past 2 weeks, we passed it last week, the Senate passed it this week, brought forth by 2 legislators, to represent Ithaca. But it's fine. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that this ban, they want to put a ban on the use of CO2 for fracking, because you can't use water, and this is a technology that was evolving. Apparently, the company here's the fact. I haven't spoken to the company. The company has this technology. They would use CO2 to frack, to get natural gas and sequester the CO2 into the ground instead of having it in the atmosphere, which we think would be a positive thing. Yeah. But I don't know the technology. But yet these legislators went forward without talking to the DEC. The company did not put forth a proposal to the DEC to use the DEC's expertise, review, and analysis to see if the technology was even feasible or safe. But before an application was submitted, before the DEC could even review it or analyze it, these legislators went out and the progressive legislature passed these bills, which it's not surprising to me, because it's all part. I spoke to explain my vote. Because they kept saying, well, I'm a scientist. You don't need to be a scientist to realize that this is really all part of the Democratic playbook in Albany. Mm-hmm. It's all part of a plan. Once again, I said it over and over, to dismantle the affordable and reliable natural gas infrastructure, supply, and delivery system, to ultimately take away consumer choice on how you heat your home, cook your food, power your buildings and the vehicles you drive. It's just going to jeopardize the reliability of the grid, lead to dangerous blackouts, and continue this mass exodus of out-migration, our nation-leading out-migration problem in New York State.
It's amazing. I also want to, and I don't know how to segue to this, but I know that you recently spoke at the Public Protection Conference Committee, and obviously you and I have talked about a lot. It comes up on the program a lot, and that's public safety.
Oh, absolutely.
And so tell us a little bit about that and some of the things you focused on.
Sure, absolutely, because what happened is after the One House budgets, they put together conference committees, or joint conference committees, to kind of start the process of the three-way budget negotiations. So my leader, Will Barkley, appointed me to be our designee on the Public Protection Conference Committee. And so we wanted to talk about where our priorities should be and what we want to talk about. We talked about the concerns we have with the majorities and even the executive's proposals relative and policies that we've seen in place about soft on crime. We all know about the disastrous bail reform laws that were put in place, the inadequacies of the reforms they keep talking about, because the fact of the matter is we're still the only state in the union that does not allow the judge to consider the dangerousness of an individual when releasing a person to the public. bail eligible crimes. We saw about the dismemberment down in Long Island, and these individuals were able to walk away. Also, we talked about the need. It's long overdue when Governor Cuomo issued an executive order when he was in office that basically denied the ability for law enforcement to cooperate with federal ICE officials to be notified and cooperate when an illegal migrant commits a crime, and they could be addressed and they could deport them or take care of them. But no, these individuals are being released. There's no cooperation, and you saw that with the tragic story of the young lady in Georgia.
And I'm glad, and I thought that was very nice that you named the law Lakin Law.
Right, absolutely, because I mean, this individual, if there was cooperation, he would not, that could have prevented that from happening. And the other side saying, well, you're politicizing this issue. No, they politicized it when they passed this dangerous law and put this, the not allowing our cooperation between our local or any law enforcement and our federal ICE officials. So that those policies are responsible for some of the tragedies that you're seeing. You see the other issues we talked about is the spike in dangerousness of a retail theft crime.
It's causing businesses to either leave and shut their doors or never consider coming to New York.
You see stories all the time, especially in New York City. And then so the governor wanted to try to address some things. The one house budget has really failed to address that. And we talked about the need for more local law enforcement funding. The other thing, which I was happy, and I congratulated the governor and thanked her. She wanted to provide local law enforcement the tools, the ability to go in and shut down these illegal sticker stores that we know that are plaguing our communities all across the state. Because right now the only one who can shut these down is the Office of Cannabis Management, which is a disaster.
It's a joke.
They don't have the resources in it. Their operations are ridiculous.
It's all public relations. They actually, Phil, I don't know if you saw this because it came out just this morning. New York Times, of all places. New York's marijuana scorecard. There's 85 legal shops in New York. There's over 2,000 illegal ones.
Right. And they shut down. They put them down one time. They open a store someplace else, and
sometimes in the same place.
Absolutely. I mean, you've seen it's happening here. It's a disaster. So that's something we need to have our local law enforcement the ability to shut them down. But the majorities didn't put that in their one house budget. And certainly the other issue we got to talk about when we talk about public protection and the budget that we brought up is the governor wants to shut down up to 5 prisons, correctional facilities. But she just wants it with 90-day notification.
Let's talk about that when we come back from break, because I really want to focus on that. But also, one other number to take away here. This was reported, I can't remember, I saw it yesterday. I want to almost say Politico. The unintended consequences of these illegal sticker stores. In 2019, the upstate New York Poison Center had about 7 calls reported of children ingesting these marijuana edibles. And in 2023, the numbers spiked to 211 cases. These are the kind of things. So from 7 to 211. I mean, it's just another consequence of of rushing this through. We've got to take another short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Phil, I saw this actually again from Politico just yesterday. Closing an additional 5 prisons without a plan for the host communities is creating worries among Democratic state lawmakers. Have you seen that firsthand?
Well, obviously, when they close down facilities, it has a devastating impact on our local communities. They always say they have a we're going to work with those local communities. The state has a terrible track record of repurposing these facilities. They've closed down over 25 correctional facilities since 2011. Not many of them, I think maybe a handful, maybe 6 or 7 have been repurposed, and not to the full extent that you don't want to see. Right. So it's like they close them down, they shut them down. It's like they just turn their back, and they without thinking about the terrible impact that has on that community, the ripple effect, not just on those employees who are there, but the small businesses, the families. So it has a terrible. So people should be concerned about it. And listen, the governor has the ability to close down any correctional facility she wants, but you'd have to give a proper 1-year notification. Well, what she's been seeking and her predecessor did time and time again, and for whatever reason, I can't understand, the legislature has granted her this approval to close down a facility with just 90-day notification. Right. 1 year is bad enough, but a 90 days is like a complete insult and slap in the face to these brave men and women who work an incredibly dangerous job to keep us safe. And it doesn't just affect the corrections officer. We said it affects the public, the PEF employees, CSCA, ASHME employees. So all these individuals, to think that someone can uproot their lives and find a home, a new school for their kids in 90 days is just not acceptable.
It's
These are
insulting.
families.
It's insulting. And you think of the corrections officers. We talked with Sheriff Aller. We talked with Sheriff Schramm. It's been a common theme that they're not fully staffed. It's tough to find corrections officers. So now you're saying, hey, thanks for doing this amazing job, keeping us safe, because people don't say that. Hey, but by the way, just always be on edge. When we're asking you to work overtime and all that, be on edge that you may have to move.
Well, the quality of life, I mean, it's been very, very difficult.
Yes.
I mean, I've known, I brought this up to the commissioner, I know people that were at Livingston Correctional Facility, that got shut down. Then they went to Gowanus Correctional Facility. That got shut down. Then they went to Southport Correctional Facility. That got shut down. So these are people. These are families. These are kids. I mean, why don't we have a better consideration of these families in this process? And unfortunately, the reason for justifying the prison closures in the past have been the prison population has decreased. That all it does is really put more people in fewer facilities.
Exactly.
And we've talked about the increased violence that we've seen on our correctional officers and even inmate staff assaults.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that was mind-blowing to me is the commissioner said we need to close these prisons because we have a workforce shortage. And we're like, are you kidding me? I also brought up the point to him in a one-on-one meeting, and also and my colleagues, we have a staff shortage of like nurses. We don't. The answer to that is not close down nursing homes and hospitals.
Of course.
What do? You put recruitment bonuses, retention bonuses, longevity bonuses, things that you give them better pay and benefits to, so they want to stay there and don't hold over their head every 2 years. There might be another prison closure.
Right.
And there's things we can do. I mean, they have this legislation, which the governor again, we passed unanimously in both houses. They refer to it as a death gamble. So. If you're a corrections officer and you get your 25 years, which is the retirement age, when you can retire if you want, if you secure that, but you decide to stay work a little longer, but you were to die, your spouse would not get access to that retirement. It would just allow you a death benefit. And so it would cost $11 million. Now, I'm not $11 million is a lot of money, but in the context of $233 billion, and to help keep more of these people working for us. So the Governor Vito said put it in the budget. She did not put it in her budget. The Assembly, for whatever reason, didn't put it in their budget. The Senate did. So when we talked in the public protection meeting, I said this should be part of the budget. Put the death gamble provision in the agreed upon budget. Reject the 90-day prison closure notification. We can and we should. The Assembly, I'll give them credit, in their one house did reject it. The Senate, for whatever reason, came up. Let's use 180 days. 180 days is no better.
No.
Let's reject it. If she's going to close and make them go through the 1 year notification.
I know we could talk a lot more, pardon me, about this, but we have to move on to another break, and then we're going to end on some good stories. Is that okay? All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice
Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Heselson studio. Assemblyman Phil Palmesano joining us in that studio. I know I said positive note. This is from a viewer, though. You don't have to respond, Phil. Why does it feel like New York government just keeps rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? It does seem a little bit like that. But anyway, we're going to talk about good news. I don't even know where to begin, except for earlier in the week, I put the photo online, and we actually just saw the commercial for the Sound of Music. But we put the photo up of the Corning Painted Post kids visiting you. That was such a great picture, and it's amazing to me to see people that are in school in 2024 still fighting for something that was started in 2017.
Yes, the students at Corning Painted Post High School, student journalists.
Yeah.
They approached me in 2017 when they wanted to, heard other states where the student journalists have more free speech rights. They call it the Student Journalism Free Speech Act.
Yeah.
So when we were talking, I was so impressed by their initiative and just by them and talking to them. So what we did is I said, I'm going to put forth the legislation. Yeah. Just so you can see
the process.
Your action caused, this is your bill, you started it. And then after that, we built coalition. We worked with Donald Pardo, who took over the bill in the Senate. Ryan Kavanaugh, after Tom O'Mara, took it over in the Senate. And these young men and women have worked the phones. They've got tons of sponsors in the Senate and the Assembly. They continue to advocate. They go to meetings. They've challenged superintendents. Corning Painted Post school superintendents have always, Mike Janowski and now Michelle Coffey. They've been 100% behind these kids and supportive of their efforts, which is great. Some schools aren't as cooperative in different places, but we're making progress. And I tell these young men and women, I don't want to say kids because they're young men and women, this is going to happen someday, but because of them. But I really want to remind them, this started with you. Right. You're going to see this happen. So the students that were there in 2017 now are out of college probably.
Yeah.
They're going to see this come to fruition. But
That
the thing
way.
I'm impressed by, and, if this is the future of our future journalists, I feel like we're in pretty good hands. If, their initiative and how hard they work, it's going to happen someday. So we're happy. It was great to have them up in Albany. So we had had a chance to talk a little bit. They were talking with legislators, local leaders, education chairs. We got to get this done. I just think it's a thing, but it's a tribute to our young men and women, our kids, our students who are really taking this initiative, and it really kind of goes into the context. Make your voice heard. You have a right to speak out on those issues that are important to you. Because if you're not, others are speaking on issues important to them. That's a theme I talk about when I go in to talk to the classroom.
Right.
Every semester I go in to spend five class periods talking to the students about getting involved, the importance of getting involved, making sure your voice is heard. Don't let anyone diminish your voice because you're too young, you don't have enough experience. You have every right to speak out. So it's exciting to see the progress they've made in this. And ultimately, I tell them, don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen. Sometimes it takes a while in Albany, but it's going to happen at some point. I'm very confident. I just don't know when, but it's going to happen because of their initiative and their perserverance.
You also, Matt, and I saw the picture. I haven't posted it on the screen, but with the FFA groups, you're having a lot of groups coming in. Wanted to see you.
Yeah, it's been the last we had local libraries from the the Southern Tier Library System. We had local teachers come up. Jeff Parker and Belinda Parker from Steuben Soil and Water Conservation District were up recently. They do tremendous work in our local communities. The FFA groups, the young kids, we had some. Here I go saying kids, young men and women again. We had them from Penn Yan and Marcus Whitman came in a small group, and then we had a bigger group from TST Boses that came up that I met with. We had a larger group, and as they're the future of our, not just our future farmers, but future of our country. So I had a chance to talk to them about the importance of getting involved, like I do in the classroom, like I was kind of just talking a little bit about here.
Yeah.
And as I was talking, the fun part about it was, as I was talking, I felt this arm around my back, and I looked over, and it was Speaker Carl Hasty.
Isn't that
with a smile on his face,
yeah.
and he was just so engaging with the kids, and I guess the kids talking to them, and we were joking back and forth. I go, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Speaker of the Assembly. I go, we disagree on some issues, but he's a good guy. I mean, he's here. He's the head of our chamber. I know him. He's a good man.
Yeah.
Just different. We just joke around like different ideas on things, but he's a good guy. And he said it was. Because these are your people. I go, yep. And actually, most of them were from other areas, because it was, but a few were. And he said he's got a good heart. It's a Republican heart. I think the Democrat heart's a little bit better, but it was fun. And after he left, I said, "This is the stuff you don't hear about in the news. This isn't the stuff you see on TV. There is some collegiality that can happen, and I think that really goes back to the exchange we started years ago. Kind of slowed down during COVID. It's something I really want to build back up again. But that first exchange I had in 2013, Carl Hasty wasn't the speaker at the time. We were at a dinner with him and talked to him. I've gone to Somos with I was on a plane with him talking and just joking around. He goes, "Hey, Palmesano, look, you're to the left of me." I go, "That's pretty absurd, Mr. Speaker, but I kind of like to think that you're to the right of me."
That's funny.
So, but there needs to be collegiality, and I really think, and that I have to mention the name Amo Houghton.
Okay.
He was all about collegiality and just doing your business, but having civility and collegiality. We used to talk about Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. They fight during the day, but they'd have a drink or sit down and talk. There needs to be more of that. I think if we could have more civility and collegiality, we might not have some of the bitterness and partisanship and the bickering that we see. But we gotta keep fighting for our people. But there needs to be, I think, more collegiality and civility in the House, and we've made some progress in that over the years. But then COVID, I think, kind of took the steam out of that because we were not gathered for almost like 2 years. It seemed like so. But we're gonna get back to it. But it was really, even the group said, that was great. I would never think that. I mean, that was probably one of the best parts of the trip, to see that interaction that we wouldn't think about or even think is possible. So that was positive, and I thank the speaker for doing that. It was really nice.
One last question before we go. You got a big day today.
Oh yes, yes.
Have you been practicing?
Oh my Lord, I did. I had to read through this book. So today this is Ag Literacy Week. So the last few years I've been going into an elementary school and reading a book to the elementary school kids. So this year I'm reading I Love Strawberries. So I did, Frank. I'm not going to lie. I went through. I don't want to stumble or stutter over a word that I should know when I'm in front of a group of elementary school kids. But it's a great way to promote agricultural
that's
issues.
great.
Ag
At a time when we
literacy
need it in the
at a
state
time
more
when
than
we
ever.
need it, especially with the assault really that's going on.
Just
in
remember,
our agricultural communities.
pronounce it out. Isn't that what they teach you in elementary? Make sure that if you
I know.
can't get it.
Something's going to happen. I'm going to goof up somewhere along the way, because especially when I try to read a book, holding and looking at it and showing it to the kids. But we'll figure it out. I'm really looking forward to going into Irwin Valley this morning to talk to the kids.
That'll be great. Well, Phil, thanks so much for giving us so much time, and I know we'll be doing this again soon because there's always something coming out of Albany.
Absolutely. And there's always Fridays, right?
There's always Friday. Phil Fridays. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining us on Phil Friday. Join us on Monday at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on Big Fox.